I'm here at We're All Hill in southwestern Britain to tell a little bit of the story of the Celtic cultures and a bit of the tie-ins with the Bible that folklore says this place has. Specifically, Joseph of Arimathea was mentioned in the Bible as being the uncle to Jesus, and he's not mentioned very much. But local legends have kind of expounded and expanded his character story, and he was supposed to have landed on the opposite side of the Tor over there and walked over here, and he did this because he was a tin miner and a lead miner. And this would also tie into Jesus himself being a bit of a handyman, because the Bible never said carpenter. In original Hebrew, it said handyman. So he would have been something like a miner or a woodworker or a shipbuilder. And they came down here, and at the time of Jesus Christ, this area was considered the heart of tin mining, the heart of lead mining. The whole peninsula in southwestern Britain, from Cornwall to Sussex, which was famous for lead. And it's said that Joseph of Arimathea, his boat, crashed somewhere off of this peninsula, and he walked through a grove of ancient trees, two of which are still left, and he arrived to this hill after walking for a good while, and he remarked, "We are weary all." So the hill became We're All Hill, and a number of places in Britain are named the We're All Peninsula, We're All Mountain, We're All Hill, and he had a staff with him that was the horn of crowns that the Romans fashioned for Jesus. He took a stick from that tree, and it said that he planted it in the ground here. And what is so terrible is this is a public walker path, and you're supposed to respect kind of the sanctity of the environment around here. And this was a religious site for the New Age movement, for pagans. And the owner of the land was faced with the opportunity the local council wanted to build a number of 3-story homes here. And they said no, because the thorn is here. Well, several days later, the owner of the land came, kicked it over. And this had been here since the time of Jesus. And it was knocked over once during the English Civil War because Cromwell's soldiers said that it represented superstition and they didn't want anything to do with it. But then this farmer comes out and does it again. And after that, it was grown from a thorn in the abbey, which was still a part of the original. It was grown from a sprig. So this has been here since the English Civil War, and even before that it was descended from the original tree, and this guy knocked it over. So it's only been knocked over by Cromwell in the English Civil War, and also by the slow advance of housing and capitalism. But if you take a look, people have left offerings, if you could zoom into the little pebbles right there, of white quartz, which is sort of a sacred phenomenon. People like it here in Glastonbury. It's considered tied in with Avalon and Arthurian legend, and just over to the left of it is this stump itself that is still left, and people still consider it a sacred site. And over here is a rock that was placed there to sort of commemorate the stepping of Joseph of Arimathea and his party of 12 who arrived in Britain to preach Christianity and mine for lead. I'm here at Breed's Mound in Glastonbury, and I wanted to come here to show you guys because it's not very often that people visit, but I think that this is one of the most important sites for Christian history in the UK and for Celtic history as well. And this is because in 2016 there was a dig that took place by Richard Brunning, and this was the first dig that had happened here since the 1960s. The dig in the 1960s found a little over 30 skeletons, and they dated them to around 700 AD. But these carbon dating methods were pretty outdated, and by 2016 they were able to more accurately date them to around 400 AD. And this means they must be British or Romano-British and that they're Celtic people. And because of the position of the remains, it indicates that it was an abbey, it was a monastery, and it wasn't just a regular church. so it must have been here for quite some time before they were buried, and it also predates both Iona Abbey in Scotland and Glastonbury by many, many years. And recent developments threatened it, just like the thorn was threatened, and just like the thorn being torn down. So a group of people called Friends of Breed's Mound stepped up and bought the surrounding fields. The area is famous for Irish visitors who see the the area is famous for Irish visitors who see it as a way to connect to Saint Brigid. And Brigid is also an Irish Celtic deity, a goddess. Brigid was worshipped by many different names in Wales, Scotland, throughout Romano-British England, France, Brittany, you name it. She was the Celtic goddess, one of three, that was one of the most important icons of Celtic culture. And when the Catholic Church realized they couldn't suppress her personality, they created a saint called Saint Brigid. Now, William of Malmesbury wrote in 1135, as well as a monk at Glastonbury in 1400, that Brigid visited this place in 488 CE. And it was said that the mound contained her relics, at least until the time that the monk wrote about it in 1400, and it possibly could have been there up until its visit by Cromwell, who also destroyed the thorn of Glastonbury. Now, Brigid or Breed or Bridie or any of number of these names was worshipped, blah, 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 blah. And the altar here itself was constructed by Abbot Richard Beer, who died in 1524. And he was the man who created the chapel for St. Joseph underneath the Ladies' Chapel. And this was a very, very big undertaking because he needed to dig underneath the chapel and risk its collapse on top of him. But he did this because he wanted to promote the saintly worship of Joseph of Arimathea. And you can still see, although sadly I didn't get any video shots of it, there were old hooks on the top of the tomb here. There were hooks on the ceiling that would have been used for votive offerings. You would have dunked them in the well water just adjacent to this altar and hung them on the ceiling in front of the simulated tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. And this would have been basically a way to give thanks to things you were thankful for. This well was only uncovered in 1825 during a little clearance at the Lady Chapel, and it should be noted that the Lady Chapel was also called the Chapel of St. Joseph, and this is associated very closely with Joseph of Arimathea, who was very popular in legends surrounding Glastonbury and Avalon. And it's also said that Joseph of Arimathea was the founder, the legendary founder of the church here, and it's also said that he journeyed to this place in England in the 1st century AD with the Holy Grail. Now, to bore you with a little bit of more concrete history, you'll notice that the archway over the top of this well is built in a Norman style, which would have come well over 1,000 years after the visit by Joseph of Arimathea. However, the stones on the well itself more closely echo Roman wells found in the region, so it isn't unreasonable to assume that this well would have been contemporary with Joseph of Arimathea, if indeed he did visit the Isle of Avalon. In 1184, a great fire destroyed the abbey. Services continued, but the pilgrims dropped. So in 1191, the monks claimed to have found the grave of King Arthur. They found, buried 16 feet deep, a massive hollow oak tree with 2 skeletons, with a lead cross and the inscription, "Here lies interred the famous King Arthur on the Isle of Avalon." The dig was prompted by King Henry II's conversation with an old Welsh bard, but other stories say that there were 2 large pyramids in the churchyard, which the monks just sort of dug between because they were curious what lied beneath them. I don't think King Arthur was buried here for 2 reasons. First, and most obviously, the monks needed more visitors, and finding King Arthur would draw them in. Second, and probably more likely, Henry II started major wars with the Welsh, that is, the true Britons, unlike himself, who was a Norman. If King Arthur was found, then the Britons would no longer have a rallying point like King Arthur and usher in a new Celtic age. And this is the Chalice Well. It's closely tied into the legend of the Holy Grail, and the well itself has been in constant use for many thousands of years. Archaeologists even found flints from the oldest period of the Stone Age here. It was also used in Roman worship and later on for Christian use. It's taken as a symbol of femininity, or the feminine deity, because of its red oxide waters and their equation to menstrual blood, while the Tor, only a few hundred yards away, is taken as a masculine symbol with the church on top. This demonstrates not just goddess worship, but the idea of a yin and yang, or the masculine and the feminine energies, equating to the creation or the creative force. And this is the core of pagan worship. It's a very natural type religion. Christian mythology says that the water is red because of Joseph of Arimathea and his hiding of a chalice there that caught the blood drops of Jesus when he was crucified, or that he may have even hidden the Holy Grail itself here. And this is a very interesting place for neo-pagans today. In the early 1900s, a dig took place near the old kitchen to make a drain, and a stone was found that's now called the Egg of Glastonbury, and locals immediately identified it either with some sacred ancient Celtic object or a Greek stone. And it makes sense, seeing ancient churches built on top of Romano-Celtic wells or burial mounds. To find something ancient underneath the cluster was almost expected, and a 1914 article on it remarks that it must have been a natural stone. However, judging by markings carved into it, it must have been used for different reasons at wildly different dates. Initially, it would have been used by pagans, followed by Christians, who set a cross into the bottom of the stone, and this was sort of a popular practice at the time to turn Celtic sites into Christian ones. The author also equates the stone with the Greek idea of egg stones, or omphalos, marking the navel of the world, or a spot of sacred energy which emanates from the ground. The author also equates these circular stones to multiple religions, including the black marble sphere found at the tomb of Christ, which marks the burial of Adam's head, to the Kaaba, to other religions which have similar stones in places of spiritual significance. And when I arrived here, I found a older couple which was very new age, putting their hands on the stone, and they said it was a great way to ground yourself to the earth's energy. And these are the Mary Magdalene almshouses, built in the early 14th century as a charitable housing for around 10 men. Parts of the original chapel are still here, but it was mostly destroyed in the dissolution of the monasteries. However, in 1460 it was dedicated to Mary Magdalene, Saint of Lepers. What's interesting with Glastonbury and the association with neo-paganism, though, is that Mary is often portrayed as the wife or the partner of Jesus, and in some legends it's said that she traveled to France, while some earlier followers of Christ, including Joseph of Arimathea, continued on to Britain. Other legends say she had a child or children with Jesus, and that their bloodline continues. The chapel here then takes on a more interesting flair, that of venerating the ancestors of Jesus, with pilgrims often portraying Mary Magdalene as a sort of goddess figure herself. It is a fun thought, but I don't fall into one camp or another. Many of these legends are based on interactions between the two in the Bible, which suggest more romantic connections, only because the behavior of Middle Eastern men 2,000 years ago doesn't match with more modern social norms. For example, Magdalene did kiss Jesus on the lips, something which Saints Peter and Paul did, although nobody's suggesting they were romantic partners. So Mary Magdalene was a very important person in the Bible, and this was sort of glossed over by later generations in schools of Christian thought, but she was given the deepest knowledge and the deepest teachings by Jesus, and the legends associated with her depict her as going over to France or spreading the religion abroad, and this closely got wrapped up into that of Joseph of Arimathea. These are the Gog and Magog trees, and if you're going to see any site in Glastonbury, I would really recommend these because they aren't going to be around for very much longer. They are sadly the very last of the Oaks of Avalon. As I mentioned earlier, they were the sacred ancient grove which Joseph of Arimathea took to walk around the Tor and up to Weirall Hill. In 1906, the rest of the large number of trees here, which formed an ancient road, were cut down to make way for a farm, and these were left. And because of the way that trees live, the outside is alive, only the very outside bark, and the inside is dead. So when the inside rots away, that creates a very convenient looking place to set down candles if you're a worshiper. But this is also incredibly dangerous because the inside is rotted away and makes very easy firewood. And because of that, in 2017, a worshiper left a candle lit in the interior, badly burning the Gog tree. So please, if you visit, you can leave offerings nearby, but don't burn it down.